Hey y'all. I've just been reflecting on the latest episode of Twilight. So you Twilighters, thank you for having me be in a position where, being a man of reflection, I'm placed in a position where I need to reflect even more. I need to understand the subtleties, the ins and outs of this case, the extreme delicacy, differences, and sensitivity of each of the people involved. The thing we want to do differently here, Twilighters, is strip it down. This whole case, this entire cast of characters, all of these extreme events, in my estimation, become lumped together. And I find that unfortunate because the people's lives are more important than that. And some of the people are less popular. Everyone knows how much I love red. Blue is exciting. We've got these other ladies that were just super committed and neat, the ups and the downs. We've got Cappy, who I find very fascinating. We've got other people a little more prickly and different, take a little more love in your heart to accept their contributions and struggles in life, and that maybe as fans or researchers in this case, there's not going to be a big payout, you know? The Nancy Pittmans are not going to come out of the woodwork and show a great deal of trust to some usurper dickhead like myself from a million years after the fact. And it's all quite understandable because it's been relayed to me from survivors and people who've been through this Manson grind, that it's incredibly invasive. It's terrible. People have a license to treat you very badly. And that's why there's not that many experts in this case that I think are actual viable researchers who have sustainable points of view that actually matter. I mean, we've got a lot of people on the internet who want to chime in. There's people who clearly like to make some money on this. You've got your H. Allegra Lansings who have wonderful production, and then ultimately perhaps their fan base grows out beyond their understanding, love, or commitment of this subject. And then you have unfortunate incidents like people understanding that Lisa Gallagher is fucked up in the past and she burned a lot of bridges in her punk rock memoirs from whence she came. But yeah, H. Allegra Lansing is a great example of what I don't want to do. I bring this all up because we're talking a little bit last time about the raid of August 16th, 1969. So I'm going to quote deeply here from the Edward R. Collin book. Deb Silva was involved with providing actual factual information. I believe if you buy this book, which I think you should, I mean, if you're a serious researcher, it's an affordable thing. But as is oftentimes the case, people who self-publish don't self-edit well. So this thing's extremely repetitive. I'd say bordering on Mein Kampf repetitive, just like constantly flipping the same narrative over and over and restating the same facts over and over. But there's some great ones. Here's what I'm doing. I'm going to get the fuck rid of this song. Jesus, Joni, get off my nuts with that song. Love her very much, but she can get a little fucking tedious, man. In the background. Ooh, let's get back to the real shit, dude. This is one of my favorite records of all time right here, dude. Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Judas Priest, the 1980 and 81 years. Back to our subject. So it was about 6 in the morning, previous, right? So you're talking 5:30 in the morning, 5:45. So there was a bunch of information that had been garnered through various law enforcement agencies, a lot of pissed off neighbors. If these reports are to be believed, I had a survivor throw eyes up. Who made these reports? Who said these things about episode 3? Wait a minute, we had direct feedback about episode 3 from somebody who fucking matters? Hold up. What is fucking... We had feedback about the subject of episodes 2 and 3 by someone who matters. And for me, that's the whole point of this endeavor, Twilighters, is to learn, to be humble, to get the dates and facts right, to honor this case, and to contribute what we learn, not to hoard, hide, squirrel away, or be selfish about these things and make these subjects about ourselves, okay? If I'm guilty of that, please call me out on it. I would like to be a better person at all times. As part of the exercise of this channel is I'm learning to be more diplomatic and a better, more humble person if all is to be believed about my true goals and my sincerity in this subject, okay? So feel free to call me out as I'm calling others out. So this survivor asked me who supplied the information, and it was the LASSO, so the LA Sheriff's Department, right? CHP and local law enforcement's there who committed this raid on August 16th. There's a 54-page report that Deb Silva had supplied to us, and very informative document. I read it many times over a period of weeks and really absorbed it because it puts things in a different light for me as an adult. I know people who've experienced things, their points of view are in amber, if you will. They remember things the way they were, and when things evolve or change or are different, it's not always the case that the memory evolves with the feeling, okay? So if you remember something decades later, maybe you're remembering it as the person who experienced it at that age, okay? Decades younger. And then when you get older, what can tend to happen is you can have a little bit more oversight and insight, like myself as a parent, like myself as a 57-year-old man. I can have some different insight than I did when I was making some of my earlier decisions as a young man. So looking at these reports in that light, very fascinating. Just incredible. To see the characters be described even in these very desultory, quick descriptions. Steve Grogan, Charles Manson, different people, their vehicles, their modus operandi, the way they spoke, allegedly. Very fascinating. But people on that side of the fence, even at this time, very defensive, very skeptical of any reports anyone provides, be they hackneyed journalists like we're trying not to be over here as Twilighters, be it fans who read things incorrectly and get an amalgam of literary inputs that they then have coalesced into what they feel is an opinion that is correct and right and justified. And you'll see that in various iterations on the internet with people on this subject. We're not going to name any names. But even with these survivors throwing the card out there, the who provided this information card. It's great reading. I can't recommend it enough. Deb Silva. Where are we? I know you've already liked. You've subscribed. I'm over 50 subscribers. Like, wow, this is amazing. Casey Fields, right here. My in-house expert, right? We have these avenues that are going to keep this thing straight. I'm not going to need to stray off the beaten path of facts because these facts are so fascinating. We don't need a Mr. X. We don't need anything false, fake, or added. There's no need to spice these things up. This raid happened on the 16th. So as I said, it's a cooperative effort of various law enforcement agencies. So this early morning action apparently caught some of the family by surprise and unawares. It's well stated that Charlie told various people the night before that we're going to be raided in the morning. You can have any opinion you want on that. That's very interesting points to consider, certainly. So, what I've been told by people who are at the raid, the picture of Charles slumped over with that look on his face of just being like bagpipes as the wind is let out. You know, so he's in a very uncomfortable position. Multiple broken ribs apparently administered by the sheriff's department. And so they caught them rather unawares, according to popular opinion. So it was a written statement from Deputy Sheriff P.R. George. He said he noticed a small man heading out the back door and gave pursuit. Well, this is when Manson's ribs were broken. That's why you see that body language. There's been some speculation, and I've always honestly felt that Danny DeCarlo was an informant. And I've been corrected recently by someone who absolutely knows, I feel, and whose opinion I'm not going to question. And this person relayed to me, Danny DeCarlo testified against the family after the fact because, as Casey has pointed out, as Deb has pointed out, as all these various experts who participate as Twilighters themselves have allowed us to understand, the whole situation there was it was a building thing. It was very much something that was happening live and in person. And when we get down and see that Danny DeCarlo and his brother Dennis, they'd been involved in firearms manufacturing and these different things. And if you look at the addresses that they gave to law enforcement and communicating with them, they were in Long Beach, which is where their family had a government contracting business and manufactured firearms on a rather large scale. So some of this is surprising, some of it isn't. There were quite a number of credit cards that were found during this raid. So for the time, these are fairly sophisticated crimes just put out in a normal way that young people would do. We see a lot of that today. So they rounded up suspects. They had the Malibu sheriffs also involved, as well as the LA County sheriff. So like I say, multi-agency cooperational task force. In today's money, Casey Fields has pointed out on broadcast episode number 2, this would have cost, in today's money, roughly $2 million to execute this raid. We've got the well-known list of those arrested. These are, real well-known folks here. Continuing down. And there was almost 30 people arrested in total. But the point that was made to me recently was, apparently Danny testified. That was an earth-shattering bombshell drop there. Sorry, folks. Give myself a heart attack. Apparently, Danny was not involved in an informant role previous to his incarceration. Apparently, that came later, and it was due to these various charges hanging over his head that needed to be dealt with, as has been the case in most books and in most understandings of the case previously. We had put forth, Casey and I, that perhaps he was an informant. I'd had that dirty feeling. He just had that look on his face. Simi Valley Sherry and him talking after the fact, and the way they mocked Charlie a little bit and different things. I know that comes when relationships change, when power dynamics change, okay? And then when you're trying to distance yourself from something that's perceived as very ugly, and you want to make yourself feel different and again, distance yourself. You'll mock someone. You'll take these tones. So when I was told quite forcibly that he was a person who testified in a negative fashion about the family after the fact. He was not an informant during his time at Spawn Ranch. He was not cooperating with law enforcement previous to this August 16th raid. So there's been a lot of speculation about Danny DeCarlo, and then mainly about Shorty Shea. And that is a very exciting thing. That is very hard for me to process because, again, I love Lynn. I love these various people that I've grown sentimental about, that I have good feelings about. And then I'm trying to understand how true some of these statements are. Because, again, we read these things, and I would like to have a better understanding of some of the things I didn't like reading about Shorty being mocked in the third person, the use of these dishes, some of these statements that Lynn allegedly made. Well, Shorty, like, he won't be needing these dishes, or whatever the words may or may not have been. These are all points of interest. These are the things that keep us coming back. I want to know a couple of things from y'all in these comments, if you would. How many people have read this book to get these great details? And then how many people believe that Danny DeCarlo was an informant previous to the raid? Versus, okay, this is just the second question, so it's an A or B answer, right? Do you believe he was an informant, or do you believe he simply testified after the fact? I'm told that's the case by someone, like I say, who I'm not going to question. So in terms of Twilight, that is the answer. He was not a law enforcement informant, though he did testify after the fact. So that is one of the great payoffs and benefits of doing Twilight, of having you Twilighters in this whole conversation, because I wouldn't have had that clarity. I could have gone down another rabbit hole about Danny DeCarlo being an informant. And this is research. This is bedrock. This is why we're doing this. This is a sustainable model of information that's going to be shared here on Twilight in the most generous and unselfish way as it has been shared to us. It's not like I learned all of these things, or Casey became an expert and an author on these things because, we just are great and we're better than you. We know everything. No. It's because through our efforts and my faith in the concept that if you have an open heart and you're working with sincerity and you're actually truly working, not just jacking your jaw and you don't make it about yourself, more will be revealed. And for me, that as a storyteller, as a researcher, is someone who is a to the bone historian. That's exciting. we might learn more. The other benefit of this is, this person I'm talking about is helping me just 2 ears, 1 mouth. Extremely difficult for me, as you all saw in the first 2 episodes. Well, I'm mellowing out, I hope. And with your patience and your indulgence, I hope to be a better, more presentable, professional researcher who can bring you these things as you're supporting us. And we really appreciate you, Twilighters. We do. So let me know. I'm all, even asking the question. I was all fired up for Danny DeCarlo to be a fucking snitch. And he wasn't. He just, take that as you will. The person who told me this wasn't bitter about it. But as a fan and as people after the fact who have feelings about these things as armchair quarterbacks and, Monday morning experts, what do y'all feel? Is that a disappointment that he just did what he did after the fact and then was in the Hendrickson film? Well, I'll leave that up to you, dear viewers. But again, I feel Shorty got short-stroked on the brush department. His portrait is very incomplete. I feel he had a lonely heart. I feel he was a very tragic character on certain levels. But then I've had other people tell me otherwise, that maybe he didn't really need to be a part of the movie industry as much as it was thought. And we're going to explore some of those characters soon. Look for our dear friend. My buddy Casey has this buddy, and I can't give his name out yet, but he has some serious opinions about Shorty and his actual desires or lack thereof to be a part of the movie industry. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. Again, Twilighters, thank you for your time. Ultimately, that is our true and final currency. So the fact that you spend it with us, we really appreciate you, and also appreciate your brothers and sisters here in this community. We're here to educate and to love each other. Please speak to one another as if we're all in the same room and we're all friends, because we're starting off as friends, and let's keep it that way. So let's have civil conversation. If something you start to say starts off like, please exhibit a filter. I love you. I hope you understand that in gifting me your time.